She thought she rescued a dog, but the dog was rescuing her. They used to say nothing good ever came from the last hut by the termite hill. They said its roof leaped sorrow and its walls held only echoes. But they did not know that a single act of kindness, lifting a dying dog from the dust, would bend destiny itself. This is the tale of Iya Adunni, the old woman the village pitied, Ireti, the stray everyone left for dead, and Chibuzo, a young man who had everything except a family to call his own. At the edge of Adebayo village, after the maize fields thin out and the footpath narrows, stands a modest hut with a roof patched in woven grass. There lives Iya Adunni, Iya for her years, Adunni for the sweetness that hardship could not sour. She once shared this hut with her husband, Pa Adewale, gentle hands, quiet laughter, empty pockets. Together they dreamed a simple dream, children who would run between the rows of pumpkins, small feet beating the dust like drums. But the gods were silent. No baby's cry ever warmed their nights. When Pa Adewale's lungs failed him, the wind carried his last breath through the doorway and out across the fields. He left behind a cooking pot, a straw mat, and a cat named Folu, whose purr stitched the evenings together. Years later, even Folu grew old and drifted into sleep that never ended. After that, the hut sounded like a shell, hollow when you tapped it, empty even when the fire crackled. Iya Adunni tried to adopt once. The office clerk looked at her thin wrists and the frayed edges of her shawl. "You struggle to feed yourself. What will you feed a child?" She nodded. Understanding is not the same as acceptance. Understanding is a stone that sits where the heart once was. The people of Adebayo are not cruel. Mama Ifunanya saves wilted leaves for Iya. Mr. Jambo, the carpenter, sometimes hands her a log too knotted to be useful. The children call, "Iya, wave!" and she waves back, smiling with her lips, but not her eyes. Pity is a heavy load, heavier than a bucket of water. It presses on your shoulders until you grow shorter without noticing. Every afternoon, Iya Adunni sweeps her yard with a branch broom, lines up her 3 cooking stones, and ties her scarf tighter against the wind. She walks to the market slowly, counting coins with her fingers, whispering to herself as if she were not alone. At a hot market day, voices rose like birds scattered by a slingshot. Sellers called out prices, children laughed, goats complained from their ropes. And then Iya saw it, a dog, little more than bones wrapped in dust, lying near the sugar sacks. Its fur was the color of ash. Its breath came like a broken bellows. Flies wrote cruel letters across its eyes. "Leave it, Iya," said Mama Ifunanya, glancing away. "It is beyond help." "Don't touch that thing," shouted Mr. Jamba. "You'll bring sickness to your hut." A group of teenagers snickered. "Iya is lonely, lonely. She will marry the dog next." Laughter crumbled behind them like old bread. Iya Adunni knelt. "Omo," she whispered, "child," because her heart had only that one word for the small and helpless. She slid her scarf beneath the dog and lifted it. The weight shocked her. It was the weight of absence. "Iya, it will die in your arms," someone called. Then let it die feeling held, and began the long walk home. Inside the hut, Iya warmed water in a dented basin. She spoke softly while she washed the dog, rinsing dirt from its paws, from its ears, from the hollow between its shoulders. She heated thin porridge, stirred in the last spoon of groundnuts, and blew on each portion before setting the bowl down. The dog swallowed, then licked the bowl clean, then licked Iya's wrist as if to say, "I'm still here." "Ah, you're a wind-blown thing," Iya murmured. "Ireti, I will call you Ireti, for you arrived with hope on the breeze." For 3 days, Ireti slept. Iya moved around the hut like a shadow, rising at dawn to fetch water, returning with herbs from Pa Adewale's old patch. She made a bed from her folded shawl and placed it near the fire. On the 4th day, the dog stood, legs trembling. On the 5th, he took a step. On the 6th, his tail twitched once, just once, and Iya laughed out loud, surprising herself with the sound. By the 2nd week, Ireti followed Iya everywhere, out to the pumpkin mounds, along the footpath to the market, back again with the setting sun. In the market, the children began to call him Ireti Iya, Iya's hope. Gossip in a village moves faster than rain off a tin roof. Now the people watched Iya differently. "See how she shares her food with a dog," whispered Mama Ifananya, half disapproving, half amazed. "Kindness can't fill a stomach," grunted Mr. Jamba, though his eyes softened when Ireti trotted past. The teenagers invented a new rhyme, Ireti and Iya, 2 bowls, 1 spoon, and burst into laughter that didn't travel far. But not everyone mocked. Mama Neka, a widow who sold clay pots by the well, said, "A creature saved is a prayer answered." She gave Iya a chipped pot and would take no coins for it. For boiling broth, she insisted. Days began to steady into something like joy. Ireti learned Iya's footsteps, learned the crackle that meant food, learned the whistle she didn't realize she'd learned to make. At dusk, they sat outside the hut. Iya hummed, Ireti pressed his head against her ankle and sighed. Then, one morning, the routine broke. Iya woke to silence, no paw taps on the floor, no whine at the door. "Ireti?" she called, checking the corner, the doorway, the bush by the pumpkins. She walked to the market, then to the riverbank. She asked Mama Ifananya, she asked Mr. Jamba, she asked the teenagers, who shrugged. By sunset, her throat was dry from calling a name the wind kept carrying away. For 3 days Iya searched. On the 4th, she sat on the threshold and folded her hands in her lap the way she had done after Pa Adewale died. Something old and cold returned to the hut and sat beside her like an unwelcome guest. At the market, some clucked their tongues. "You see, dogs are wanderers." The teenager smirked. "Destiny is destiny, Iya." Even those who cared had no words that could lift grief. Iya stirred thin porridge and ate half. She left the other half in Ireti's bowl until ants found it. That night, the hut was a shell again. There is a way an old person cries, silently, carefully, so as not to use up the little strength still needed for tomorrow. Iya Adunni cried like that. The tears were not anger, they were not even despair. They were acceptance, that hardest of waters. She tied her scarf, swept the yard, and whispered a small prayer. "Where you are, may there be shade. Where you walk, may the earth be soft." 7 sunsets passed. On the 8th morning, Iya was pounding dried maize when a bark split the air, sharp, joyous, impossible. "Ireti?" she whispered as the pestle slipped from her hand. She stepped outside. There he was, Ireti, bright-eyed, his coat clean, his ribs no longer a counting board. He bounded forward, then stopped, tail wagging in respectful arcs. Behind him stood a young man in clean boots and a traveler's jacket, dust on the hem, kindness in the eyes. He carried a leather lead loosely, as if it were a suggestion rather than a tether. "How are you, Ma?" he asked, voice soft. "I am fine. My name is Iya Adunni," she said, both hands pressed to her chest. "My name is Chibuzo. The road is my teacher, and hope is my map," he smiled. "He is Ireti to you. To me, he is the Mani. He lost his way some weeks ago. I searched everywhere. I feared the worst. This morning he led me here. He kept pulling so urgently. When I saw your hut, he began to dance. Iya laughed, the sound surprising them both. He learned to dance when he learned to live. A dog's first dance is gratitude. Chibuzo crouched to stroke Ireti, Zamani, then looked up. You saved him. You gave him back to me better than I lost him. Iya glanced away, flustered. I only offered water, warmth, and a piece of my bowl, she said. Sometimes, the young man replied, that is what angels are made of. They sat beneath the oroko tree. Ireti lay with his head on Iya's foot, as if claiming both humans at once. The sun leaned west, stretching shadows like lazy cats. Chibuzo began. I grew up in Ileayo Children's Home, 2 villages away. I never knew my parents. The only constant was work. First schoolwork, then real work. I became good at breathing through loneliness until it felt normal. He chuckled without humor. I tell people I'm fine, and I am, but fine is not the same as belonging. Iya bowed her head. I too am skilled at loneliness, she said. When Pa Adewale died, I spoke to the cat until the walls learned the sound of my voice. When the cat died, I spoke to the fire. When the fire died, I spoke to no one. I tried to adopt once. They were right to say no, but truth can bruise. Then this whirlwind, she continued, nudging Ireti with her toe, blew into my life. The house learned laughter again, and then, she paused, swallowing, and then the wind swirled away. The wind came back, Chibuzo said gently. The wind came back, she echoed, smiling. He cleared his throat. Iya, may I ask something bold? Ask, Omo, she said, the word child landing softly, naturally. Would you allow me to return, he asked, not just to visit, to belong. I have a home, work, resources, but I have never had a mother, and I see that you have never had a son. Perhaps we can carry each other lightly. Iya looked at her hands, thin, veined, capable of mending and stirring and smoothing. She thought of the long road of her days and the shorter road ahead. She thought of the way the hut sounded when Ireti snored. She nodded once firmly. Yes, she said, yes, we can carry each other. Ireti thumped his tail as if sealing the contract. Change came gently, like dawn sliding under a curtain. Chibuzo arrived with builders who listened more than they spoke. They repaired the roof but kept its slope. They strengthened the walls with molded brick but left Iya's handprints in the mud plaster above the doorway. They built a small veranda where 2 chairs could watch the sunset. Not a mansion, Iya said, wary. A home, Chibuzo said, smiling. Yours. He hired Mama Save, a neighbor with quick hands, to help with chores twice a week. He invited Mr. Jamba to craft a proper door, paid full price, added a tip, and thanked him by name. He bought vegetables from Mama Ifunanya and pots from Mama Ineka, refusing discounts. Soon the market's laughter softened into greetings, pity shifted into respect. In the evenings they ate together, pounded yam with egusi soup, eforiro rich with greens, and stewed tomatoes simmered with pepper and onions that tasted like sunlight. Iya told stories of Pa Adewale's jokes and Folu the cat's mischief. Chibuzo shared tales of schoolyard tricks and the friend who taught him to whistle through cupped hands. Ireti snored with theatrical timing, earning applause. Sometimes Chibuzo stayed overnight on a mat near the hearth. Other times he returned to his business in the next district, promising, I will come back soon. And he always did. Not everyone changes their heart as quickly as a dog wags its tail. Some villagers tried to rewrite the story with their tongues. Why does that young man help her? Maybe he wants her land. People don't give without taking. Words like these float until they land on ears that choose to catch them. Mama Ifunanya, who had once clucked her tongue, found herself saying, No, The boy buys from all of us. He is building more than a house. He is building our dignity." Mr. Jamba added, "He paid me fair. Don't turn gratitude into suspicion." Mama Nneka simply said, "A creature saved is a prayer answered," and no one dared argue with a widow who had learned to sharpen words on loss. The gossip thinned like fog under noon sun. On the day the veranda chairs arrived, Iya Adunni and Chibuzo sat side by side, legs stretched, Ireti sprawled between them like a tipped sack of contentment. The sky flamed orange. Guinea fowl muttered their bedtime complaints. "Do you think," Iya asked, "that the wind knew the way all along?" "The wind," Chibuzo said, scratching Ireti's ear, "has a habit of guiding those who listen." They fell into comfortable silence, the kind that tastes of tea and lasts as long as you need it to. In a Debayo, the last hut by the termite hill was no longer an address people avoided in their thoughts. It had become a landmark where the wind changed its mind, where pity turned into respect, where a dog led a son home and found a mother waiting. And if you passed by at dusk, you might hear Iya's gentle hum, Chibuzo's low laugh, and the soft snore of a dog who had learned that being saved and doing the saving can be the same blessing wearing two names. Because sometimes when you rescue hope, hope rescues you back.